Welcome to the Surf Strong Show, conversations that build a healthy surf community. We break down breathwork, mobility, strength, mindset, and surf travel with surfers and pros from around the world, so you can surf more, hurt less, and stay connected to the ocean. Follow the show for fresh episodes, bonus drops, and free programs. This is a focused mission, and you're part of it. Today we welcome Shiloh Strong. He grew up between the redwoods of Northern California and the beaches of Southern California. He's been chasing waves and stories his whole life. He's a filmmaker, writer, photographer, and the founder of Ashes to Films, a nonprofit he started in 2025 to help fire-affected filmmakers heal through creativity. Let's get to our conversation with Shiloh Strong.
20 years ago at this point, I drove down Baja in my Vanagon I had at the time, and I had a little Jack Russell Terrier with me who I loved to death. And it was at this little point called Punta Conejo, which is on the West Cape. It's such a great spot, and it's a left, and I'm regular usually, but it was one of these times, and it can get really blown out there, but I was camping out there for the week, and I had the place to myself, and this swell came through, and this was pre-real internet, and I got just this wave that was just amazing. And it was a left, and it was the first time I'd really connected with a left. And I just remember going up and down on this wave, and it just took me all the way into the bay. And I remember seeing my little Jack Russell Terrier. He used to pop up and watch me whenever I would catch a wave, and I was just like, "Oh, Gordy." That's the happy place I go to whenever life is getting me down.
We gotta, and that's the point. Like, we gotta have those, and we're so fortunate that surfing provides it to us. We can always come back to it. We can't always have it. It's not always accessible to us, but in that realm, you really feel for people that don't have that connection back to something that gives them that deep resonance, because we rely on it. You're right. When life gets
Totally.
chaotic, which it often is, you got to have that place of stillness to come back to, and it's practice. And we just get a place that we can always come back to for that, even if it feels abstract or a little lost to us. We can kind of find it for us.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's the key for surfing, at least for me. It always changes in your life. When you're younger, it's all about just like go, go, go. And then I love the progression as you get older and start appreciating the different aspects of it. But yeah, that has been, a very grounding space for me in my life to have that to come back to.
So you've talked about in the past, and you mentioned your Vanagon. Why is the 1990 Vanagon such a special vehicle?
Well, I said I think it was the almost perfect. It's almost perfect. I don't know. It was, it's just the best little, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're kind of like the buses, but they're a little boxier, and they made them from like 1982 to 1991. And it was just kind of that peak moment for me where it was like transportation. It's just a box, but like you can fit a bunch of boards in there. It's got a rack. You can fit a sheet of plywood if you want to in there, which is incredible if you're ever doing any building or tinkering, which I love to do. Yeah. And it's just, and then you've got I don't have the full kind of camper setup because that was never really for me, but just being able to open that up, and you have an awning and you have everything, and you just open up to a camp spot, and it's just perfect.
You've wrote that you kind of have grown up between the redwoods of Northern California and the beaches of Southern California, obviously chasing waves and those stories throughout our lives. What did those two landscapes teach you early on about who you were and how you wanted to live?
Yeah. So like, Northern California, I wasn't surfing when I grew up there because I was, it's a lot colder and it's really rough, and we'd go to the beach all the time. But yeah, I was coming down to LA because I've been in the entertainment industry in various capacities as an actor originally as a kid. So I was coming down here and working and doing that. And I was exposed to surfing through somebody I met on a set actually. And it always sounded cool to me. And I, started going out early in the morning, county line. I remember the first time going out there, I had no idea what I was doing, but I loved it. It's funny because I remember when I was, 16 and learning how to surf, and I was so like impatient. There was like this aspect of like, all these waves take so long to get here, and you're only riding for like a little while, like snowboarding for me was much more like, oh, you got a whole mountain, you can just shred and go down. And it was like this whole thing, which is funny now getting older, that's what I appreciate about surfing so much more, is that I go out there to get the release, to not have that constant, to have the waves come in waves and to have the downtime. Yeah, but
Yeah,
that was kind of
stepping
what.
away from
Oh,
that idea of that we actually are in control, which is usually an illusion anyway, right? You know it.
totally.
When you're in the ocean, you're like, it's very clear.
Oh my God, completely. And I learn something every single time I get in the ocean, and it's just, these moments, getting older and looking back at the way you perceived it when you were a teenager and reconciling the two. It's always funny. Yeah. But that was kind of my introduction to surfing. And then I kind of took a break for a while. And then, I was in my early 20s, and that's when I really got into it. And I was waking up almost every morning and just driving out to the beach. Didn't matter what the conditions were, I would just go. And this was kind of pre-Surfline, like that was like kind of just starting at that point. So I'd get the tide books, and just find when the tide was right. And there's this spot, Sunset, which is right where Sunset hits the PCH, and it's just a really friendly beginner, easy wave that if you surf it at like a really low tide, it can be really great. And I always think back to that. I'm like, God, the surf was so much better back then. And I'm like, no, it's just because I was going every day. That's the reality of it. But that got me really hooked. And then I just had to incorporate it into my life always, So I was living in West Hollywood at the time, and I ended up moving out to Santa Monica. I mean, literally maybe like half a mile away from where I'm living now, which this was when I was 26. And it was just kind of the happiest time for me, because I had my first van at the time, and I was surfing nonstop and, trying to, being in the entertainment industry, and my whole life has been some capacity of creative endeavors and a lot of uncertainty and no stability. And so like being able to get away from that anxiety that can create, surfing has always been a reprieve for that.
Yeah, such an anchor away from that world of entertainment, which is foreign to me. I'm an outsider looking in on that, but just knowing the little bit that I do, that ability to step away from that energy or speed or stress and be able to go, okay, the ocean is always there. And it's this world unto itself that pulls us out of our life in a way, but almost just puts us deeper into what our real life actually is.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's real life, right? I mean, that's the moments. Yeah. Especially because I've lived my whole life in various levels of fantasy, writing scripts, pretending to be other people, directing other people to pretend other people. It's like this whole fantasy world, which I love. I mean, you get to be a kid, but then, you get in the ocean and you're like, oh yeah, this is real. Like this is a real moment.
That anchor, that grounding, how do you think that helped support you in this other world that may not have access to that as much because of that idea, right? You're surrounding yourself with extremely creative, interesting people, but you are creating something that is not reality usually. That's what it is. You're going this creative endeavor. How has surfing and that grounding in the ocean supported you in that other world?
Well, what's been great is when I meet another surfer who works in the same industry I do, it's always a like, yep, okay, you get it. Like, and I think the best thing you can do is just spend time with somebody. I mean, you go out with a session with somebody, and it's the best way to connect with people. And so it's a shared understanding of what we're both talking about here, So that's been really great to just know that you're in the club of getting it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
How often does that happen in that world, in your professional world, in the entertainment side? Is there a lot of surfers?
No, not as many as I would like, I mean, I try and get people to go out. I mean, I literally, like, my favorite thing in the world is to teach people to surf. Like, and not that many people have taken me up on it, and I'm always like, no,
It's
honestly,
intimidating. It's intimidating.
totally. Well, also there's like people have this like cool factor where it's like, oh my God, surf, and I'm like, honestly, like the majority of the times I'm going out surfing, like I'm sitting on my board, like a lot more than I'm ripping waves, but in their mind, it's like, it's very intimidating. So I love it because I just love seeing people have a good time. And if you can get somebody up on their first wave, it's just, they're so stoked,
So you were down living in Southern California, Santa Monica, and then something took you to Santa Barbara. What was that transition like? Was it a professional transition, a personal transition?
Yeah, so I went to the Brooks Institute of Photography, which was up in Santa Barbara. They're no more, unfortunately, but it was this really incredible still photography school. And so I went up there to pursue still photography because that's always been a passion of mine. And yeah, it was an amazing experience. So that's why I moved up there for school. Yeah, and that was where I was 2009, which is when my house burned down, which was a defining point in my life.
Defining
Yeah.
point in your life, absolutely. So as this is happening, obviously hugely traumatic, it's obviously formidable. How did that experience of that change the path of your life? It obviously changed it very directly. This house is gone. I'm going to have to deal with this loss, this emotional component. How did it change the path that you were on, and what were the next steps on that path?
Yeah, it's weird. I always want to like put myself in hierarchy of loss when I'm talking about this because I was a single guy in his late 20s living in a rental house in Santa Barbara, which I lost all of my stuff, but it wasn't like my emotional like home, which I understand how that could be so much more traumatic. It was, yeah, it's just such a jarring experience to have your life completely gone in an afternoon where you own nothing. And the weird thing is the flip side of that is it's incredibly freeing too, because I remember the first thing I did, well, I'm so grateful because I had my surfboard, I had a wetsuit, I had a week's worth of clothes in my car. I had my photos backed up with me, which is just amazing. And I remember I went to Goodwill and I gave everything away that I like, except for those things. But like everything else, I was like, I don't need any of this. And I remember I looked at my car and I was like, this is everything I own. And I was like, wow, that is wild. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. So there it's a weird thing because it's can be freeing. I mean, for me, being a young single guy with not that much, I just had to try and figure out how to build my life back up from that point on. And, I'm so lucky because I've just got such an incredible group of my family and my brother and my community of friends. And yeah, they were there to help me. So I was couch surfing and trying to build it back up. And yeah, I was very lucky because I had that support system.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It puts you in. Well, we talk about this a lot. Obviously, connected to surfing is being in the moment. This is what surfing does for us. But something elevated of that kind of experience, it does pull some of those layers away and let you see these people in my life, the support system in my life that we unfortunately sometimes might lose sight of because it's always there if we're great thankful enough to be able to have that, and then the gratitude that comes from that when some of those other things are pulled away, and clearly be able to see I have support that just makes it really clear.
Totally. Yeah. But, it's wild because jumping ahead to what this past year of my life has been with Ashes to Films, I don't think I was able to really articulate that back then, like, which was kind of the impetus for wanting to support filmmakers who are affected by the fires here in LA with Ashes to Films, because when you deal with that kind of loss, like you're just in reaction mode, like you're just literally dealing with it and trying to figure it out. And you're constantly like, wait, what is this? Like, and then everybody's like, what, your house burned down? Oh my God, that's crazy. And you're like, yeah. And you tell the story again and again. And it's just like, and you're like, God, you want to get past it, but you don't want to think about it, but it's so much in your face all the time. And that was kind of the idea of Ashes to Films, which, kind of jumping ahead here a little bit, but that was the realization I had when the fires here happened in LA, where I was like, God, I had the support, and I was so appreciative now looking back at that and knowing that the younger Shiloh couldn't fully understand that he needed that support and wasn't as appreciative, I think, that he could have been because he's just dealing with so much. But they were there for me, and I'm so grateful for that. And so that was kind of the idea of Ashes to Films, was to be there for so many people, having known what that's like and going through, and just, helping them.
Well, let's go deeper into Ashes to Films now. What its mission is, the avenues in which you're doing. Just go deeper into it. Give us a deeper understanding of.
Yeah, I started in January while the fires were still happening because I was reflecting on everything we were talking about and trying to figure out how I could help, and recognizing I had a unique situation that I've been through this. And, for me, looking back during that recovery, I started making short films with my brother and my filmmaking community. And I'd always wanted to work behind the camera as a writer and a director and be a member of the Writers Guild and the Directors Guild. Like, these were like dreams of mine ever since I was a kid. And so we started making short films, and this was after my fire, and that led to some success with the Tribeca Film Festival and representation, and was able to sell some scripts and get into the WGA, and not right away, but I was like, oh God, I don't know if I hadn't had the support at that time, I don't know if I would have been able to go down that path that had always been a dream of mine. So that was kind of the realization, was the reflection on myself, and then saying, okay, how can I do that? Because there's going to be so many people who are in that exact same situation in the entertainment community that's been hit so hard with COVID. And then we had these back-to-back strikes 3 years ago with the Writers Guild and SAG-AFTRA. And then your house burns down, and everybody's just struggling so hard right now in life. But the entertainment industry in LA has been really hurting. And so that was kind of the idea. It's like, okay, how do we keep these people here? Because Los Angeles is, and there's just so many talented, creative, inspiring people in this city. And like, there's no other city in the world where you can just go out and find people who want to make something with you for the love of just creating, and that is so inspiring and beautiful. And that was the idea behind Ashes of Films, was, okay, so let's raise some money, find some filmmakers who've been affected by the fires, and then give them a grant and then support and a network to be able to go and make their own short films, and then host a festival screening those films with this idea of the process of creative recovery is healing. That making the act of creating and building a community and making a film, and they didn't have to be about fire. Like, it was just like, make whatever you want. Just go make something, get your community together, and then celebrate your creative recovery.
Yeah. And
So that was the
creating
idea.
a community as you do that. It might have a common theme that there was some of this experience that was going through, but any opportunity to bring people together that creates that support, that amplifies the creativity, amplifies the healing. This is the point. This is the point of practically anything that we can do in a positive endeavor as a collective, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And, like I said earlier, when you're dealing with post-fire events, so much of your life becomes that's your story. And our idea was, okay, that's not your story. You're an artist, you're a creative, go tell whatever story you want to tell. So our line is, don't be defined by what you've lost, but be defined by what you want to create. So the idea is supporting that, because that self-definition is so important for, everybody.
And like you said, it's like the repeating of the story, or people coming from even a caring place and asking how they're doing, going through this trauma. But at the same time, is like, are we just reliving this trauma that we have and not being able to progress and build and move beyond it? Like you said, we can't ignore it. We have to deal with it, but we can't let it define us.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's finding that way, and creativity, honestly, and art expression, I think that's the answer for a lot of these things, and being able to support, because that's human, right? That's the core of humanity: stories, expression, art. I mean, so being able to get a community together to do that was just a beautiful thing, and that's the thing with filmmaking in particular. Like, you can do it alone, but you can't really do, like, you need a crew, you need a group, you need, and so that just creates more community of, talented people. So yeah, it's honestly, it's been the most beautiful experience of my life this past year, making this come together. I mean, so like more work than I ever could have imagined when I had the idea. I was like, oh, some of this, you got an idea? Yeah, that's a great idea. I remember I went to the Sundance Film Festival because it was right after the fires had happened, and I'm walking around and I kept saying, I'm like, I got this idea. Like, is somebody doing this? Somebody should do this. And they're like, God, that's a really great idea. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I guess I'm going to do this.
I guess I'm going to run with it.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm doing this. But no, but I mean, I just like the amount of people, I keep using this word serendipity because it's like literally this past year has been just a series of events where it just seems like I find the right person at the right time who has the skills that I don't have, that we're able to build something. And it just, kept going. And so, it's been amazing.
So the arc of that, you started Ashes to Films, and then have you already have had the first film festival, and then we're coming into another one, or what's the arc of where we are?
We were really lucky because I found this incredible woman, Alyssa Dudek, who's worked in the nonprofit space before, and she came on board and volunteered her time because we don't have any money really. It was just private donations. I had a little bit set aside for my own project that I was going to do, and I decided to put that into this nonprofit and learn how to do this and make it happen. We connected with the New York Film Academy, and they had a summer program already set up for teenagers 14 to 17 where they go to their campus, and they're here in Burbank. They have a campus here in Burbank, and they get a week course where they get to edit and write, and they learn how to direct, and then they go and they shoot their own short film on the back lot of Universal Studios for 2 days, and then they get their own film. And they were so supportive and wonderful, and they said, if you can find the kids, we'll have an Ashes to Films workshop for them. And this was like right before summer hit last year. It was like, late June. So we were like running around and going out all the schools and trying to get kids. And so we found 16 fire impacted teenagers from the Palisades and from Altadena. And then we got them into the program, and they made these incredible short films, which that was the one thing because it was like, it's not about what the quality of the work, it's about the process. But something happens when you give a recovering artist the means to go and create, that even if they're not about fire or whatever it is, like they're working through something. And even the instructors were like, these are some of the most incredible films we've ever seen through our program. And I was kind of encouraging for us, because I was like, is this too much to ask people? It's like, oh, your house burned down and then go make a movie. But they stepped up, and then that was kind of just, again, it happened at just the right time where we were able to show that this is working, that we've got these films, we've got this. And then we moved on to the main grantee program. So we were looking for grown-up filmmakers to come. And so people were submitting scripts and pitch decks at various, stages of development. And I had a group of, like a film selection committee where we went through them and had interviews. And, I interviewed everybody personally to make sure that they're, mentally ready for this, because it's a lot to ask, especially if you're dealing with, having lost your home. So it's finding that balance. And then we partnered with Quixote Studios here, which was able to give free equipment to all of our filmmakers. We're able to give them grants of $2,000 each, which was amazing to kind of, it's not a lot for a short film, but it's enough to get them started. And then, Echo Bend was a production company that came on to help with some post-production. And then it was just teaming them up and kind of helping them go make their films, because we weren't producing it. We were like, look, we're here to support you, give you any connections, and then we're going to host a festival where we're going to premiere your film. And that's what we were building towards, which, and that's what we did. So we got there in January.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's probably an important distinction, right? Your focus and your mission is to connect, help network, provide some resources where possible.
Yeah. And, and empowers them too, right? Like in a way, because like, I don't want them to feel like they're plugged into this whole, we were figuring this out. We're still figuring it out as we go, but it was sort of making sure that they were, feeling supported and pushing themselves just enough that they were, creative stress is good unless it's too much stress. And when you're dealing with, all the insurance and home remediation, and it's just, it's just a lot. But it's so much better to be dealing with call sheets and scheduling and shot lists than insurance lists and going back into that story. Yeah.
But it's also it's kind of that idea of, yes, it's almost in the same sense, like, okay, I'm going down this path of this nonprofit. Okay, I guess I'm taking this on, but now you have your direction for your energies, and going through something traumatic like that and all the loss of that, there's energy there that can be directed into, I won't go as just straight as a positive or a negative, but to have this and go, okay, I am a creative and I'm going down this avenue. I'm going to let this sit here for a second now, and I'm going to take this energy that I'm feeling, and I'm going to put it into this endeavor and move forward with this. It's freeing, as demanding as it is.
Yeah, yeah, totally. No, that's great. I haven't thought about it that way, but that is, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think seeing them, I mean, all of the filmmakers talked about that they loved being able to be seen for their creative passion and energy. And it was, a lot of work. I'm just so impressed that they pulled it off. And the films are incredible. Like I just was not expecting that again. I was like, it's not about that. I'm gonna host a festival. I didn't even see the films until we premiered them in
Wow.
I was like, that was my little treat. I mean, we had them like quality control, everything, but I'm like, no, it doesn't matter. I just want to see this with an audience. And I was just blown away, like.
So, I mean, you're right. You're focused on why we're doing this, and then you see the outcome of this, and that reemphasizes, I would imagine, to yourself, like, why this is so important, why Ashes to Films has such a strong resonance. It isn't about the quality of it, but the quality of it was so elevated. There's something in depth in there of the importance of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, it's inspiring, and inspiring for the idea of creativity and the
Yeah.
importance of it.
So as you've gone through this over this last year plus, it obviously, like you've mentioned how much work it is and how much demand it's had to, your day-to-day, week-to-week has had to probably evolve a little bit because of the time and attention it takes. It's finite, right? Our time is finite. So how has that changed maybe your perspective on your own, not necessarily creativity, but how you're spending your time? And maybe in the future, how has that changed your path again to how you're going to spend your time and what you're going to build?
I wish I had more time. When I realized I was going for Ashes to Films and like really trying to, if I was gonna make it happen, I kind of knew that I was kind of positioned perfectly to be the person to do that, but I didn't have the skill set of managing a nonprofit and all of that. So it's been a lot of learning. Like I've definitely had to be, because I'm so passionate about it, it can take over my life very easily. And I've had to be very intentional about making sure I'm surfing, for one thing, and making time for that, but also, connecting with people outside of that world to try and keep myself balanced and spend time with family. And yeah, just, be intentional about it, because it can be overwhelming and all encompassing in the most wonderful way. And I want it to be. I can get lost in that and then burn myself out pretty easily. It's trying to find that balance.
And we'll be right back. If you've been listening and know it's time to take your surf fitness seriously, I'd love to invite you to explore my surf exclusive coaching program. This is high level, fully customized coaching designed to unlock more strength, endurance, and mobility so you can keep surfing at your best. I only take on a very limited number of surfers because the attention and personalization is deep. If you're curious whether it's a fit for you, reach out and we'll connect and map out a personalized plan just for you. Go to surfstrongfit.com/start. Now back to the show.
We touched on it earlier, this idea of perception when we're young, right? Just charging in our surfing and going one to do, and then having, call it maturity. I don't know what the best word of it is, but
Yeah.
some perspective about how you show up in your surfing. And if I probably use surfing too much as an analogy for life,
Well,
but
you should be doing that. It's your surf show, man.
that
That's
is
great.
how I feel when I step back from things. What are the things that are grinding on me in my day to day, and that step back that you are able to reprioritize. But it's also about that same idea of the mix of these things, right? Sometimes I'll get in this place where, like, I know how important surfing is for me and my quality of life, my state of mind, and all of these things that I know it gives to me. But sometimes you get in it and you're like, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. I got to get this. And then you have to step back and go, surfing needs to happen, or I'm not able to be here for these other things. It shouldn't be a negotiation, but it is in our brain. We're having to constantly reposition those things and make sure that we prioritize so we can show up for those that need us and these missions that we have.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What's a good way? How can I incorporate that more into my life? Because, I always think of like, because it's like friction. I don't know if you've heard that term before,
Yeah.
but it's like if there's a little bit of friction, and I see it in it's so obvious with surfing, right? You're like, oh, I got to put on a wetsuit. Oh, I don't know if I want to go. And surfline's the worst thing, honestly, I think that could have happened to surfing, because not because more people are surfing. That's not the issue. It's literally the way I look at it. And I'm like, oh, it's only 1 to 2. And it's like, no, just go. Every time I go, I have a great time. So yeah, I'm just curious if you've got some tricks.
So what's interesting about that, this is a common theme I have with the clients that I work with. This is a thread. And a lot of times, even for myself, they'll hide in there. And what I have certainly haven't solved why that is, but I think a really, really strong theme of this lives in our genetic evolution. And it really comes down to your primal brain only wants 2 things. 1 is to conserve calories, and 2 is to reduce risk. Well, guess what? Everything takes those 2 things.
Yeah.
So it wants you to sit on your couch and just take in. That's it. So the way I usually frame it for myself, because I'm the same. I do this with clients and I work through it with them, but I'm no different. And so for me, we're so grateful that we live in such proximity to the ocean.
Totally.
The one thing that I do is I can ride my bike to where my local surf is. There's other spots I need to drive to, but I have one I can ride my bike to. And what I do is purposely don't check the cams, don't check the report. And I put my wetsuit on in my garage and I put my board on my bike and and it happens every single time. As soon as I'm on my bike, I'm smiling because I'm going surfing. It
Yep.
may not be great, but
Yep.
I know in that moment it doesn't matter. So
Totally.
it's exactly what you're saying is, at what point can we reduce resistance in everything that we're looking to do? And it's about opening up the door and stepping outside. And you mentioned earlier, one of the grateful things that you were when your house burned down was, I had my board, I had my wetsuit, I had clothes in my car, trying to keep that kind of stuff set up so your excuses can be easily pushed to the side. It's the only thing I've really found that's consistent about, it's just the line I say to people all the time is, when in doubt, you paddle out, period.
Yep. Totally.
And you're setting your life up as best you can to reduce the resistance in every single place possible.
Yep. Totally.
But if you find another trick, you're going to let me do.
I think that's great. I mean, the big one I really perked me up was don't look at surf cam. And you're so right. Because again, I look back at when I was in my 20s before I had that, and I would just go, well, I'd go out there because I was going out with my buddies. I was waking up at dawn and I would just go out and I was like, oh God, the waves were so much better back then. They're like, no, you were just surfing every day.
Yeah. Like you're looking around, you're checking a spot or something, everybody's kicking sand and kicking rock, and I'm like, let's go. Let's do it.
I know. Yeah. Okay. That's great. Oh, Greg, I love that, man. Just go.
Now we have to implement that. That's
right. I know. This is why you're a good coach, I guess, right?
We're all trying to support each other. Like when I tell somebody like, oh, they're like, oh, I'm not sleeping very good. I said, okay, here's the first question is, the slot machine that you have in your hand, does it sit next to you at your bed?
Right.
Oh, well, I have to do that. I'm like, no. All of these are just excuses. Like, I'm not telling you have to do that. I'm just telling you cause and effect. Because
totally.
I don't have my phone next to me in my bed, but there's an iPad right there. How different is it? It's just like, we all have our things.
I know, man. I know it's going to be wild. And I think in like 10 years, looking back on the past, like the incorporation of digital devices in our life. And like, I'm just so curious if we're going to compare it to like cigarettes, like that level of like digital dopamine, like addiction. Like, I think we're just all kind of in this, and we're an entire society that's kind of wrapped up in that, I don't
Yeah,
know.
there's going to be there has to be we're going to have to evolve in a way in how we incorporate this. And, I guess it's a little bit of hope and trying to stay optimistic about things. My hope is that some of these incredible advances in technology can get to a place where we get some of the best components of it that isn't screen centric, that allows some of these things to happen. And this is obviously a whole nother in-depth conversation about how that is privacy, all the rabbit holes that those go. But the one thing I always try to focus on is the progressing past a single screen, because that's that part that goes back to that evolved state, is that feeds right into all of those things. Like you said, dopamine, all that stuff. It also feeds right into that is low resistance. You can
Totally.
sit back into it. It's passive towards you, all of these things. And it takes a strong resolution to say, these are the limits that I'm going to put on it. And that's tough. I mean,
Yeah,
that's tough for anybody, let alone the conversation going into younger and younger years.
totally.
Hopefully we can get to that place, because we don't also want to lose sight of the fact that I'm connecting with you on this conversation,
Magic.
and these stories, we're hours and hours away, and I'll do conversations with people around the world. I have clients in different countries. I mean, there's amazing things that happen. We
Yeah,
just have to have the power and the resolution to say, okay, it needs to just stay here. That's a tough
totally.
call.
It is. No, that's great. I know. I feel like it's going to be Star Trek in like 10 years. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like I want to just be talking to my computer,
Yeah.
and that'll be awesome.
Cool, futuristic, retro style, all.
Yes, exactly.
So
Oh, that's
we've
great.
talked a couple of pretty major path changes for you, right, in your life, and these kind of, important moments that have taken you in places. And you were around maybe 32 or so, you found out a very significant thing. It changed that path again for you.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. It was actually it was honestly, I think about a year and a half after my fire happened. So yeah, I was like 32, I think, or a little younger, and I got in the hospital for something unrelated, and they were trying to figure out what was going on, where this infection was coming from, and they were scanning all parts of my body, and they looked at my aorta, and I had an aneurysm on my aorta, which is the big artery that comes out of the top of your heart. And I guess this happens pretty regularly, but it goes undiagnosed a lot of times. And this is actually what killed John Ritter, the actor, back in the day. So what happens is if it dissects, you basically bleed out in 20, 30 minutes. Like it's instant death because you're just open
And a
artery
lot of
pumping.
times they don't really know what's happening in that 20 to 30 minutes.
Exactly. That's what killed John Ritter, was they thought he was having a heart attack. And unfortunately, what happens is a lot of people will give you a vasodilator, which, because usually a heart attack is happening because your vessels are constricting. They take this, it opens up your vessels. If you've got a dissection in your aorta, it just, poof, it's just, you're gone. And so that's what happened to John Ritter. Yeah, so I got diagnosed with that, and I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, yeah, you're going to have open heart surgery, and I'm like, what? Like, so I started, researching it, got a second opinion, started monitoring it. And, they measure the size that it has to get before the risk of the rupture outweighs the risk of the surgery. Right. So they got to find that balance, and also where an insurance will cover it. So it was a process where I was going in and getting scanned every 6 months, where they would do a full scene to see how much it had grown. At the time, I wasn't supposed to get my heart rate above 120 or lift more than 45 pounds, which I did all the time because I was still surfing and trying to, this was still a major part of my life. Like I've always been active and out there, but it was always in the back of my mind. And it was, when you live with that for 8 years, it was just this constant anxiety, stress about it, all that. Always think about it. And then it finally got to the point where it was large enough, the aneurysm, that they said, okay, we're going to have the surgery now. And it was, it was almost exactly 8 years ago now, I'm realizing, And I went in and they had a full open heart, where they open you up and replace the whole aorta with a tube. And I mean, it's so sci-fi. I mean, they literally have your brain on a heart and lung machine. So they're bypassing your brain and keeping it alive when your body is dead. Yeah, because you can't have your heart beating, right? Like, it's so crazy. So like, I've never been more scared and thought for sure I was going to die. And then, coming back from that, the recovery is just, it's just intense. It's just a lot. And, it's interesting because I know you deal with a lot of health, like recovery stuff as well. And there's always this period where you think you're doing okay earlier than you really are. And you always push yourself a little too far and then you kind of re-injure yourself, and so I was definitely getting into that mindset and was not in a healthy place. I mean, I was drinking, like this was after the recovery, and very depressed, and I was like not being healthy. And kind of had a realization where I was like, okay, that my parents like were incredible, and they live up in Northern California, and they brought me back up to their place. They have this like 15 acres of redwood forest. It's just absolutely stunning. And so I spent some time there kind of rehabilitating and really taking care of myself and going to the physical therapist. And that really turned everything around for me. And then, I came back to LA, was trying to like figure out how my life was going to look now. And then I had this idea, because it was kind of coming close to the winter solstice. It was December 21st. And I had this dream of always waking up with the sunrise every day and taking a photograph at the moment the sun rose. And I had this idea like years before, and I was like, God, there's no way I could ever do that. And then I said, well, wait a second, I could do that. And what would my life be like if I did that? Like literally just think, okay, I'm just going to do this for a year. Like wake up every day, take a picture. At first I thought I'll take a picture of the sunrise and then see what happens. So I tried it for a week and I was like, wow, this is incredible. I realized really quickly that taking a picture of the sunrise isn't very interesting, but being out in the world the moment the sun is rising and having a little timer set for when the sun is going to rise right in your place, and then taking a photograph of something at that moment was such a interesting, cool experience, because it put me in the universe at a very specific point in time. It forced me to be creative and look for something that was either beauty or documentary or something that needed to be at that moment, that only happened at this moment I was in the universe. I don't know. It was just very cool. And my life, changed a lot in so many positive ways. I was surfing so much. I have a lot of photos of me on a surfboard going out there. I had a little GoPro I would take out and take a shot of that. But it was a wild experience. Just, I don't know, forced me to be very grounded, and I'm not really sure why I did it, but I just have to say it was a positive thing.
Something was really telling you that you needed. Something was telling you needed to do that for numerous reasons, probably, right? But it's that transition of repositioning your life. Just something as simple as shifting your rhythms, right? Oh, well, I'm going to get up at the sunrise every day. Well, then my day has to shift, and the rhythms of those things have to shift. It really changes perspective.
Yeah, and I'm realizing now the reason that happened was because of surfing. And this is where it could tie this back in, which I forgot to mention. I went, when I finally got cleared to go surfing again, when my doctor was finally like, yes, you could go surfing.
And how long was that after your surgery? How long was that recovery to get back into the water?
It was, I want to say it was like probably 7 months, I think. Cause it's so like, I didn't realize when they stop your heart, like I couldn't walk across the room the next day, cause you're in the ICU. It's like, it's so intense. And then, but then the recovery is like, okay, you can walk across the room, and then, oh, I can walk out into the hospital. Oh my gosh, I get to go outside, and now I'm out of the hospital, and then I can walk around the block, so there were these progressions that felt really great. And then slide back and then slowly build it back up. But then when it was like, okay, I'm I'm actively feeling better. And my doctor said, yes, you can go surfing. I drove out to C Street in Ventura, which I love that spot. And it was the sunrise. And I went out there, and this is before I even planned to do my year of sunrises. But I went out there, and it was just such an incredible moment. It gets me emotional again every time I think about it. Just seeing the sun come up and knowing that I could go out and experience something that was so important to my life. And that I was able to do it again. It just made me so grateful. I'm still so grateful. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful time. And that was kind of the idea. It was a beautiful morning, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this for a year and wake up with the sunrise and see what happens.
And what an interesting thread too, because over that year of all that places, yeah, you were probably in your hometown of Santa Monica quite often, but you were in other places. Like, what were some of the other places tied to surfing or not that you got to see a snapshot of that place at sunrise that you wouldn't have seen if you were sleeping until 9 or 10 in the morning?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, so many. I was kind of homeless at the time, honestly, because I was living up at my parents' property up there. They had a little back house, but I was crashing with my brother, and I had some friends, or I'd get an Airbnb in LA. And I slept in my car a few times too, or I'd go out to the beach and I would sleep in. I didn't have my van that I have now at the time. I had a Honda Element, but I'd built a little camper in the back. And so a lot of mornings on the PCH that were incredible. Yeah, I did go to Hawaii during that year, which was amazing. And then I ended the year in Bali. That was kind of my highlight, was wrapping up December 21st, because I did it from December 21st to the 21st on the winter solstice. And I hiked up this mountain. There was a morning sunrise hike that I was able to take, and that was the final shot that I got on the top of the mountain on that sunrise. And that was incredible. Some monkeys hanging out. It's like, wow, this is wild. It's cool.
So you've had this long career, acting, directing, writing, photography. Through this time that we've been talking, the way you talk it feels less about maybe that next role or that next thing that you're doing specifically personally. Does that make it feel like it is a different definition of success for you and the things that you're doing, Ashes to Films? Like, how has that changed your perspective professionally, personally, maybe?
Yeah, that's great. I think having had that experience with all of the health stuff and waking up with the sunrise and really taking the time to kind of do a lot of internal work and just, be present and exploring creativity. I think it allowed me to, when the time came, when Ashes to Films, the idea presented itself to me, I felt confident enough in my own ability and my own network to be able to make it work, and like I was able to say, okay, look, there's all of these Venn diagrams here of like fire recovery, filmmaking, creativity, like I was like, I'm kind of the perfect person for this. And I think it was knowing, like, I don't think if I had had those experiences in the past, I wouldn't have been able to feel confident enough in knowing that I was the right person to go and do this. Not that I think that every day. I still am struggling to try and make this work and make rent and raise more money for this thing to try and have it happen. But at that moment, that was incredible. Yeah, to be able to have that. Yeah, and I don't know what the future is looking like. We're trying to figure out this next year and how to make it work.
Well, this obviously the endeavor that you're on is in that immediate. But if you did look out, and it can be that vision of it, be it Ashes to Films, or it can be just on your personal arc of what you want to do in that creative space. What are some of those things that you are working towards that would be, I don't like to call it a dream, because it's very much about these practical steps that we're taking to then open ourselves to the opportunity of what's next. But if you do look out, what are those things that you want to be pulling into Ashes to Films or your own path?
The dream, I've always been surrounded by creativity, and I love that world and filmmaking and stories. So I'm always going to be in that world in some way. For Ashes to Films in particular, this has been such an incredible experience and collecting stories of resilience, which when we had our festival, we actually opened it up to other films that weren't Ashes to Film supported films. So we were able to bring in stories of, like, we had one that was, there were a couple fire filmmakers who were not connected with us, which were amazing, and they screened there. But we also we had like a trans story, resilience, a filmmaker about that. We had a veterinarian that followed like the life it is to work as a 24-hour vet. You know, like we want to incorporate war and like grief and overcoming adversity in all of these stories. So that's what the festival turned into, which was wonderful. And it's kind of how we see Ashes to Films expanding in the future. So the line I'm using is, the goal is to be the Red Cross for creativity. So the idea is that we could come in and support people who are dealing with natural disaster or war or conflict or domestic violence or whatever it is, but be able to say, like, look, you've had this traumatic event happen to you. That's not your story. How can we help support this community and help them tell their stories? So that's the dream. That's the 5-year plan for what Ashes to Films could be. So that's what we're hoping to do this year, is support filmmakers affected by the fires again in LA, because there's so many, and they're going to be in a better position, hopefully, to be able to do it. Again, you're still dealing with so much even a year later, but we're hoping to expand it to some more avenues. And so we're figuring out what that would look like.
So that's such an interesting aspect. I really do like that. That resonates, that idea of, like, you know, the Red Cross for films and creativity, because what we think about when we hear about a large natural disaster and event is the practical things that people need. Of course, they need water,
Totally.
they need food, they need shelter, they need these things. But there's this other aspect that, you know, as those things are hopefully taken care of, where it starts to become this other aspect of the next phase of needs. And for a creative person, that idea of, well, how do I get back to who I am and what I provide and what I build? And in that respect, obviously what Ashes to Films is working to do, what are some of those things that most people miss in that area of what people need to deal with their trauma and deal with getting back to normalcy, quote unquote, after those immediacies? What are some of those things that other people can do to help provide some of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've kind of come on the term of, we're like second responders in a way, because exactly, you hit it right. There's the first responders. You need to deal with all of that. You got to get food. You got to get a roof over your head. But recovery takes such a long time. And there's we actually screened a documentary by this great film called Afterburn, the psychological fallout of the LA wildfires. And it brought up this field of study, which I didn't realize, which is called disaster psychology, where it's specific to, because there's so many natural disasters that are happening, and how long it takes to recover from that, and the steps and the process. And it was really informative for me, even 16 years later after my fire. I was like, oh, that's what I was doing. Okay, that makes sense. Like, so it was very informative. Yeah, but I think that's the idea, is to be supporting them. And I'm not a mental health professional. Like, I mean, there's a lot of other stuff going on there if people are dealing, with war or conflict or death, or, like, the one thing I knew was, as a creative person, making a film was so healing, and that creative expression was so healing. So being able to find people that we can connect with and help in that way is just our little way of being able to help some people and champion this idea of resilience. Because when we're focusing on all of these horrible things that are happening, right? Because we're talking about trauma in all of these cases. And yes, we absolutely need to focus on situations that fires bring up. For example, climate change or insurance issues or the housing crisis. Like, it brings up a lot of things that are problems. But if you focus on the resiliency of the individual, there's something beautiful and incredible about that, because it's highlighting the problem, but it's also recognizing the individual power to overcome that. And so that's the core idea behind what I see as a healing part, because that is empowering.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we're all trying to do, right, as surfers is keep surfing, right?
Yes.
Keep creating whatever we create in the world. And, just feeling strong and alive as we get older. So in kind of that idea, what are you most trying to protect in your own life right now to reach those places?
From a health standpoint, mostly. I mean, yeah.
Be
I
any
mean
that
that's the one thing for me I've realized is I need to keep my body moving. Like if that's surfing or yoga. I mean, those are the two like pinnacles for me, honestly. If I can get a good balance of yoga and surfing in, I see my mental health, everything in my life gets so much better, So yeah, that's the number one priority I try and do. And then everything else kind of falls into place after that. Not that I'm really great at that. I'm still it's always
it's
a
a path.
struggle.
We're all on the path.
It's a process,
Yeah, we can get into the details and get into the weeds on things, but that's really exactly what I come back to. Keep moving. Your body is made to move. Keep moving. However you can do that in this
Totally.
highly distracted world that we're in.
Yep. Yeah. With all the screens and the easy way to sit down and the
Yeah.
comfy chairs.
Yeah. Yep. We're in a tidal wave of comfort in a lot of ways.
Totally. Yeah, I know.
Hey, Shiloh, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you being on the Surf Strong show. It's been great talking to you, man.
Man, Greg, this has been great, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it's been awesome.
Thank you for joining us on the Surf Strong Show, Conversations for a Healthy Community. I'm your host, Greg Finch. I'd like to remind you to like, comment, subscribe to this and all of our episodes of the Surf Strong Show wherever you get your podcasts. For all show notes and links that we talk about in the episodes, videos of the podcast, you can go to surfstrongfit.com/podcast for this and all the past episodes. Thanks for joining us. It really means a lot.